Okay, topic 2, let's now talk about your student loan portfolio. In topic 1, we talked about the cost, and now let's look at some of the loans that you're going to be borrowing in your student loan portfolio. What you're looking at is a list of different loan types that you may have in your student loan portfolio when you graduate from dental school. I would say hopefully you won't have all of these different loans, but you could, or you could have a combination of them. Federal, Stafford, Grad PLUS, campus-based, and private. And notice that I've highlighted Federal Stafford and Federal Grad PLUS. We're going to look at those in detail here in just a moment. It's not unusual for the Federal Stafford loan to be somewhat of the foundation, if you will, for borrowing when you go to dental school. Some of you, after you max out on Stafford eligibility, if you do, may seek additional help in federal programs with Grad PLUS. And again, we're going to look at these two in detail in just a moment. But there's another category called campus-based loans, and I'd encourage you to speak with the professionals in the financial aid office at your dental school about the campus-based loans. Not all dental schools participate in these programs, but you may hear a reference to Federal Perkins loans, health profession student loans, and loans for disadvantaged students. Guys, these are actually federal loans that are given to the school, and the school acts as the lender. That's why they are called campus-based loans. These loans tend to have better terms and conditions than Stafford and Grad PLUS, but again, you're going to need to talk with the financial aid office to see if your school participates. You may have already applied for these, you may already be receiving some of them, but if you have questions about Perkins, health profession, or what we call LDS loans, loans for disadvantaged students, talk to the financial aid office. You may also end up with private loans, but once again, we're going to talk here in just a moment about the differences between those. If you would, too, notice the asterisk by Stafford, Grad PLUS, and Federal Perkins. These loans appear on a website called the National Student Loan Data System, or NSLDS, that we'll be talking about in just a moment. Okay, since the majority of you, and maybe all of you, as you're listening to this, are going to be borrowing in the Stafford program, let's talk about this program. First of all, you'll see the reference to direct Stafford loans on your master promissory note, on the NSLDS record. All that means, guys, is that you did not choose the lender for this loan. The lender was chosen for you. The lender for all new Stafford loans is the federal government. You borrow directly from them. That's why it is called a direct Stafford loan. And once again, lender is the federal government here. Now, all the Stafford loans that are for periods of enrollment July 1, 2012 and forward are unsubsidized. And what do we mean, by the way, by subsidized and unsubsidized? If a loan is subsidized, that simply means that you're not responsible for any interest during school and any kind of grace period you may have on the loan. Some loans don't even accrue interest while you're in school in grace periods. Other loans do, and the taxpayers pick it up for you. But the Stafford loans you're going to be borrowing for dental school are unsubsidized. Now, you may have a subsidized Stafford loan from an undergrad or post-bac program, and that will not change. You will keep that subsidy. But Stafford loans you borrow in dental school are going to be unsubsidized. Now, you can borrow up to $40,500 a year. I would encourage you to at least ask the financial aid office. There are some dental schools that will prorate that amount slightly higher based on the length of your budget, whether it's a 9, 10, 11, or a 12-month budget. But it's up to $40,500 a year. The interest rate is 6.8%, and please note that is a fixed rate for the life of the loan. There's a 6-month grace period, meaning you've got a 6-month window period to get your feet on the ground before you're going to be required to start making payments on these loans when you graduate. Postponement is costly. It's not that there's a fee associated with postponing the loans, but it's costly because what? Interest has already been accruing on these loans and will continue to accrue if you get into, for example, a residency program and decide that you can't pay and you request to have the loans postponed. So no fee to postpone federal loans, but interest is accruing. That's why we mean postponement is costly. Now, multiple repayment options on federal Stafford loans, and that, guys, is one of the huge advantages that federal loans have over private that we will be talking about. Once you have maxed out on your federal Stafford loans, the $40,500, or if it's slightly higher at your school, once you've maxed out on that, if you still need additional funds, you may consider going to what is called a Grad PLUS or Graduate PLUS loan. Once again, you see the reference to direct Grad PLUS, simply meaning your lender is the federal government. There's no private bank involved in this. These are unsubsidized loans, and you'll notice the interest rate of 7.9%. I'm sure you're way ahead of me on this, but if ever there was an argument for responsible borrowing, it's the interest rate on a Grad PLUS loan. Because again, depending on what your tuition is, much of your Stafford money, maybe all of it, is going to go to cover tuition, and many of you are going to be using Grad PLUS to finance your living expenses. So as we said earlier, if you can reduce your living expenses, that may reduce what you have to borrow in a 7.9% Grad PLUS loan. Notice that third bullet, though, up to the cost of attendance less other aid. One of the advantages, if you will, even though this is an expensive loan, one of the advantages to Grad PLUS is that regardless of your cost, regardless of the cost at your dental school, in a combination of Stafford and other aid and Grad PLUS, you can borrow Grad PLUS all the way up to your cost of attendance. Now, please don't leave this presentation going, oh, great, I'm going to look at what my budget is and I'm going to borrow all the way up because he said I could do that. Watch your budget carefully, but Grad PLUS, you could borrow all the way up to your cost if you needed to. Guys, that's a reason where you'll hear some folks say you can borrow your entire cost of attendance with federal money. That's what they're talking about, Stafford and Grad PLUS. Grad PLUS loans don't officially have a grace period with them, but they have something that operates like a grace period for Grad PLUS loans dispersed on or after July 1, 2008, which would accommodate all of you who are just starting. There's something called a 6-month post-enrollment deferment. Same thing, long story short, you won't enter repayment on these until about 6 months after you graduate. Once again, postponement costly, you saw that on Stafford, but the reason for that is there are no fees to postpone these loans, but you're accruing interest at a 7.9% fixed rate. Just as is the case with Stafford loans, Grad PLUS loans have multiple repayment options. Once again, one of the huge benefits that they have over private loans. Both Stafford and Grad PLUS are on the NSLDS, the National Student Loan Data System site. And guys, if you're for some reason you're really not clear on what you borrowed, maybe you had undergrad loans and post-bac loans, and now you're borrowing for dental school, and you want to go to a place where you can find everything, go to the NSLDS site. And also on that site is information on who services your loans. This is not terribly intuitive, I don't think, on the site, but when you log into the financial aid summary on NSLDS and you see a listing of your loans, if you click on the number to the left of each loan, you'll get what I call a back page that has more information on it. And guys, somewhere around the middle of the page, you'll see a number of different organizations involved with your loan. On the Stafford and Grad PLUS, on direct loans, you're going to see that it's the Department of Education as the lender, because again, the feds are the lender for these loans. But look at who the servicer is, because that's the organization you'll be working with in repayment. Stafford, Grad PLUS, Perkins, and any federal consolidation loans you may already have, they're on NSLDS. But those other loans we talked about, those campus-based loans like health profession student loans, LDS, and also private loans are not on the NSLDS site. Now let's talk for just a moment about the difference between federal and private loans. Certainly the American Dental Education Association, we're not going to be heavy-handed and say you absolutely positively should not take out a private loan. We'd encourage you to talk to your aid office about this, but we want to be sure you understand the important differences between the two. First of all, in terms of federal student loans, you've already heard me say multiple repayment and postponement options. In terms of repayment, you've got standard 10-year plans. You've got 25-year plans where the payments are the same for 25 years. If you consolidate, you've got up to 30 years. You've got plans that are tied to your income. You've got plans that are graduated where you start paying lower up front and then accelerate and pay a little bit higher later on. Federal loans are eligible for the forgiveness programs. One of the things that I am going to encourage you to keep on your radar screen is the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Federal loans, federal direct loans are eligible for that. That's not the case with private loans. Federal loans have fixed rates, and yes, some would argue they're high, but they're fixed, and at least you know what the rates are going to be. They're not going to be varying all over the place. And then, as I've already said with Stafford and Grad PLUS, guys, you can borrow all the way up to your full cost of attendance regardless of what that is with federal loans. With private, you just have minimal repayment options. It's usually 15, 20, 25 years, nothing tied to income. Your postponement options are minimal, and in some cases, guys, you may actually pay a fee in addition to the interest accrual to postpone a private loan. They're not eligible for forgiveness program. Most of the private loans still have variable rates, some with no floor, and that means no, with a floor, meaning there's only so low the private lender will let that loan go. Some of them, though, do not have interest rate caps, meaning if the interest rates started to climb, there's no cap to how high that could go. There are a few private lenders now offering fixed rate loans, but those tend to be a bit higher. And their borrowing limits. So some major differences between federal and private loans. General rule of thumb is to go with federal before private. And once again, talk to the financial aid folks if you have any questions about that. Real quickly, some comments on the educational debt of your colleagues who've gone before you. These numbers are from the annual survey that ADEA does of the dental school seniors, and this is from the class of 2011. We don't have the 2012 figures yet. We'll have them soon. But really some good news. Nearly 1 out of 5 graduates in the class of 2011 had absolutely no debt or debt lower than $80,000. Certainly good news there. The flip side, though, is that close to 90% of the graduate had some kind of student loan debt when they got out of dental school. And you can see the averages for indebted graduates, just over $200,000 nationwide, lower for public, and higher for private. By the way, when you're talking to your school about the average debt, be sure you ask them for the debt figure for indebted graduates and not for the entire class, because when you factor in everyone, including those folks who've not borrowed, that tends to lower the average. Some kind of sort of bad news, though. If you look at the last bullet, nearly 1 in 5 of the graduates in the class of 2011 had debt over $250,000. And a gentle reminder, that's not what they paid back. That's the principal amount that's borrowed. Let's take a look at what those numbers look like. And I know you're just starting dental school, but the idea is to prepare you for what you may see when you graduate. Now, guys, these figures are based on the 2011 number of $203,000 and change for the average for the class of 2011. A standard 10-year repayment, you're running about $2,700 a month, and you can see what the total repayment cost would be. That's if this particular graduate did not accelerate his or her payments and try to pay the loan off in less than 10 years. But remember me talking earlier about an extended 25-year repayment plan. Look at what happens to that borrower if he or she takes that same amount of debt and amortizes it. That's the fancy word for spreads out the payments over 25 years. The payment drops pretty dramatically, over $1,000 a month. But if that borrower held that loan to term, that means took the entire 25 years, you can see an exorbitantly higher amount in total repayment cost. This is an example, to go back to the budgeting, where it'd be nice if you could choose to initially get into a 25-year repayment plan to show perhaps a mortgage or finance company. Maybe you're trying to finance money to buy into a practice. The 25-year plan would help you show a lower debt-to-income ratio as opposed to the standard 10-year plan. But again, you want to make the choice of getting into that plan. You don't want to be forced into that plan because you have consumer debt and other obligations. We wind up this section with some comments on perhaps some advantages for dental school graduates, and I say this very respectfully to your colleagues who are graduating from other health science degree programs. The majority of you guys are going to enter the income stream faster. Now, some of you are going to go into residency programs or postdoc programs, but clearly the majority of dental school graduates go right into the income stream faster than some kind of a practice. And what that does is that may position you for aggressive repayment faster than some of your colleagues in some of the other programs who may be required to do a residency program before they can practice. And one thing I will tell you, and we try to make this point especially at the recruitment fairs and to all the folks who are contemplating going to dental school, the gauntlet has been laid down because your colleagues who've gone before you are well known for paying their loans on time. And we're confident that you can do the same with smart budgeting and responsible borrowing.